I never planned on becoming a cryptid hunter. It just sort of happened. My life was normal once. Office job, long hours, and weekends spent nursing beers while watching bad TV. That all changed 3 years ago when I encountered my first cryptid. A creature I couldn't explain or deny. It was a Wendigo in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I was camping, minding my own business when I saw it. 7 feet tall, emaciated, with hollow eyes that burned like embers. That encounter ended with me barely escaping with my life, and the knowledge that these creatures are real. Since then, I've been hunting them, researching them, and putting them down when necessary. Last month, I got a tip about something big in the Ozark National Forest. "It's not like anything you've ever dealt with," the caller said. Their voice was raspy, trembling, like they were speaking their last words. "Stay out of there, or you won't come back." I should have listened. But curiosity is a funny thing. I drove into the Ozarks on a cool September morning. The forest was dense, alive with the sound of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The locals at the gas station gave me strange looks when I asked about the forest. "People go missing out there," one old-timer muttered, his eyes narrowed. "Animals come back. Different," another added. I shrugged it off and continued on my way. Cryptid hunting wasn't just my job. It was my purpose. Whatever was lurking in the Ozarks, I intended to find it. My first night in the woods was uneventful. I set up camp near a clearing and kept my rifle close. As I drifted off to sleep, I heard the distant howling of wolves. But there was something odd about the sound. Too deep, too guttural. The next morning, I found tracks near my campsite. They were massive, clawed, and not like anything I'd ever seen before. Not bear, not wolf, something else. The tracks led deeper into the forest, so I followed them. As the hours passed, I noticed the woods growing eerily quiet. No birds, no insects, just silence. Then I found it. A mutilated deer carcass, its body shredded like paper. The thing had been torn apart with such ferocity it made my stomach churn. That night, I kept my fire blazing and my gun loaded. Around midnight, I heard something outside my tent. A low, raspy breathing. Slowly, I unzipped the tent and peeked out. 2 glowing eyes stared back at me from the darkness. The creature was massive, hunched over like an ape, but covered in matted fur. Its mouth was wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth, and its arms were grotesquely long, ending in razor-sharp claws. It let out a guttural growl and lunged at me. I fired my rifle, the sound echoing through the silent forest. The creature howled in pain and vanished into the darkness. My hands trembled as I reloaded, my mind racing. This wasn't like anything I'd ever hunted before. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As the sun rose, I packed up my camp and started back toward my truck. But no matter which direction I went, I couldn't find my way out. The forest seemed alive, shifting, keeping me trapped. Days blurred together as I wandered the forest, trying to find my way out. My supplies dwindled, and paranoia began to set in. Every shadow looked like the creature. Every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. I found strange symbols carved into trees. Circles, lines, and runes that pulsed faintly in the moonlight. They felt ancient, powerful, and wrong. Something about them made my skin crawl. That night, I dreamed of the creature. It whispered to me in a language I didn't understand, its voice dripping with malice. When I woke, I found fresh claw marks on the trees around my camp. I started hearing voices. Whispers coming from the shadows, calling my name. At first, I thought it was exhaustion or dehydration. But then I saw them. Figures moving just out of sight, too fast to be human. One night, I woke to find my fire extinguished. A stench filled the air, rotting meat mixed with sulfur. That's when I saw it again, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me. It didn't attack this time. It just stared, as if it were waiting for something. I screamed at it, fired my rifle, but it didn't flinch. It turned and walked into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. I stumbled upon an old cabin hidden deep in the forest. The door creaked open, revealing walls covered in newspaper clippings about missing persons and strange sightings in the Ozarks. In the corner, a journal lay open. The journal belonged to a man named Elijah, a cryptid hunter like me. His last entry read, "It's not just one creature. It's the forest itself. It doesn't let you leave. And if you stay too long, you become part of it." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The forest wasn't just alive. It was hungry. With renewed determination, I set traps and prepared for a final showdown. If I couldn't escape, I'd at least take the creature down with me. That night, it came for me. The trap slowed it, but it was relentless. Its roar shook the ground as it barreled through the clearing. I fired round after round, but it kept coming. Finally, I hit it in the chest. It let out a deafening scream and collapsed, its massive body twitching. But as I approached, I realized it wasn't dead. Its eyes opened and it smiled. A grotesque, unnatural grin. I ran. The forest came alive around me, trees bending and twisting as if to block my path. The whispers grew louder, now screaming in my ears. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for air, but I didn't stop. Then I saw it. A faint light in the distance. My truck. I sprinted toward it, ignoring the pain and fear. Behind me, the creature howled, its footsteps shaking the ground. I reached the truck, threw myself inside, and sped down the dirt road without looking back. I made it out, but I wasn't the same. The forest had taken something from me. My peace, my sanity. For weeks, I had nightmares of glowing eyes and whispered voices. I wrote down everything that happened, hoping it might serve as a warning. The Ozark National Forest isn't just a place. It's a trap, a predator that lures you in and keeps you forever. So if you're reading this, take my advice. Stay away from the Ozarks. Some things aren't meant to be hunted. Some places aren't meant to be found. Two things, same trip. Not really the woods, but might as well share. Me and my friends Mexican graphic design students went to the Laguna Salada Salty Lagoon in Baja California, Mexico, to watch the Milky Way and shoot some star trails photography. The Laguna Salada is a vast patch of salt-encrusted land that was once a lake. It dried quite a bit ago, and you can actually find ancient bleached seashells if you check carefully. Anyways, we arrive at an entrance from the highway and drive around 500 meter deep into the Salada. We come to a nice spot with a lot of bushes at one side while clear on the other. We thought this was perfect, as the bushes would block out the car headlights from the road. We stop and get out of the car. Then we all notice this strange, hissing or rattling sound all around us. Imagine being surrounded by invisible people playing maracas, some far, some closer. We are so puzzled and fascinated by the sound that we start to throw out theories about what it could be. A friend says it might be echo from the cars, other says they're insects, and another one, jokingly says, alien probes man, etc. With that put aside, we set up the tripod, camera, shutter switch, we shoot some test shots, and after everything is right, we leave the camera with the lens open to shoot the star trails. We grab some lanterns and decide to go exploring. After walking about 15 minutes, one friend says, in a very fearful voice, "2 men are coming at us." We are like, "Yeah bro, nice try." But he repeats, "Not kidding, 2 men are coming at us, and they got assault rifles." Almost instantly, the 2 men yell, "Turn off the flashlights, turn off the flashlights now." And we're all like, "F he's right." We are scared shitless and do as the men command. They get close and say, "Don't move, keep your hands down, don't do sudden movements." And then they start asking questions in a very aggressive tone. "Who are you? What are you doing here? How old are you? What are your names? How long have you been here, etc." After explaining ourselves, they start whispering shit to themselves while pointing their rifles at us. We are all frozen with fear, believing we were going to be executed right there for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the men say, "Go back to your car and keep taking your photos, but do not go near that bush patch because," and I quote him, "rifles tend to misfire in there." As we are walking away from them, I was pretty sure we stumbled into a bunch of narcos doing some shady shit there. I'm sure we are going to be sprayed from the back. I'm just walking slowly as our flashlights are off, waiting for that hot lead to enter my back. You know how they say that your life flashes in front of you when you feel you're close to death? I can assure you it's not a lie. Past Christmas come to my mind, me opening my sweet Super Nintendo, graduating from high school, past girlfriends, etc. I even start to get angry at life, telling myself, I'm going to get killed by a scum narco all because of some photos. Thank God, nothing happened. We get the message and decide to nope the F from there. We decide to haul ass and get the F out before we become another number in Mexico's narco wars. As we are all grabbing our shit and packing up, we hear a loud rattling in the floor. A friend turns a flashlight and turns out it is a baby rattlesnake, inches from my friend's feet and in attack posture, with Rattle shaking like crazy and all ready to strike. We cannot believe how stupid we were. All the sounds we heard in the beginning turned out to be rattlesnakes all around us. Narcos and rattlesnakes. We noped the F out of there and never came back. This is a terrifying tale, the story of a Bigfoot war that allegedly took place in eastern Oklahoma through the years. I finally decided to look into the matter, gather as much information as I could, and decide as to whether the tale might have some truth to it or was an outright fabrication. The following is what I was able to find out. It is said that around 1855, Choctaw people in what is now Leflore County, Oklahoma, and farmers in what is now Arkansas were experiencing some terrifying events. It all began in a rather benign way with the theft of vegetables, a few heads of livestock, and other foodstuff by stealthy bandits in the night. The thieves were quiet and never seen. They're also smart as somehow they never ventured into Choctaw encampments on nights when a watchman was in place. Neither did the bandits ever fall into the traps set for them by farmers outside of Indian territory. Those charged with finding and capturing these marauders began to develop a begrudging respect for the willingness of their adversaries as time went by and the petty thefts continued. While the thefts were annoying and did cause some hardships near the Choctaw or neighboring Anglo farmers were afraid. However, things changed once women and children began to go missing. A group of 30 Choctaw cavalrymen was organized to hunt down the abductors. The group was led by Joshua Leflore, a man of a mix of Choctaw and French blood who was deeply respected by his fellow tribesmen. Also joining the search party was a warrior named Mosheladabi and his 6 sons. They were huge men, all approaching 7 feet in height and weighing more than 300 pounds each, and were regarded as fierce warriors and expert horsemen. The Tubbies were so effective in mountain warfare that despite their massive size, they became known as the Light Horsemen. The contingent of searchers, armed to the teeth, set out into the region known today as the McCurtain County Wilderness area to search for the kidnappers. After riding all day, the searchers finally arrived in the area they believed the bandits to be hiding. Leflore brought his troops to a halt, stood up in his stirrups, and surveyed the area with a spyglass. It is unclear exactly what Leflore saw, but whatever it was, he ordered his men to charge forward toward a stand of pines roughly 500 yards distant. Leflore and the Tubby men led the attack as the troops closed the distance between themselves and the stand of pines where the kidnappers were thought to be hiding. They were assaulted by a tremendous stench, the unmistakable odor of decay and decomposition. The horses of most of the men began to buck and rear, tossing the riders. Only the mounts of Leflore and Tubby men were disciplined enough to remain composed, allowing the 8 men to continue through the pines. As the men cleared the small wooded patch, they came upon a large earthen mound. Scattered across the mound were the bodies of children and women in various stages of decomposition. Leflore and the Tubbies caught a glimpse of a number of the murderers fleeing into the tree line on the opposite side of the mound. Only 3 of the killers stood their ground to meet the charge of the Light Horsemen. At this time, the cavalrymen realized they were not going up against any human foe. Rather, standing before them, while snarling and beating their chests, were 3 huge hair-covered creatures. Despite what must have been a shocking sight to him, Leflore drew his pistol and saber, spurred his mount, and charged. As Leflore approached the nearest ape, it took a mighty swipe and struck his horse in the head, killing it instantly. Leflore managed to roll off of the fallen horse quickly, jumped to his feet, and fired multiple shots into the chest of the creature. Once his pistol was empty, Leflore attacked the ape with a saber, opening up gaping wounds on the animal, which roared in rage and pain. Leflore's assault on the creature was so quick, and the shock of seeing hair-covered monsters so great that the Tubby men hesitated, completely stupefied before entering the fray. This delay allowed one of the other 2 apes to get behind Leflore, who was intensely focused on the ape he had engaged. The second beast grabbed Leflore's head with 2 huge hands and ripped it from his shoulders. The horrible sight jolted the Tubby warriors into action, and they opened fire on the 3 Sasquatches with 50 caliber Sharps buffalo rifles. 2 of the beasts were killed instantly, dropping in their tracks. The third creature was wounded but turned and fled before the lethal shot could be fired. Robert Tubby, only 18 years old but already 6 foot 1 inch and well over 300 pounds, spurred his horse, ran down the injured ape, and dispatched it with his hunting knife, as the rest of the troop joined them. The light horsemen surveyed the area. The bodies of dead women and children, mostly partially devoured, littered the area. The smell of decay along with the terrible odor of the beast's feces caused many of the men to vomit. After composing themselves, the men gathered the remains of the unfortunate women and children and buried them. They also buried their leader Joshua LeFleur. As for the 3 black ape monsters, their bodies were placed upon a huge bonfire and burned. With their hellish task complete, the Choctaw warriors returned to Tuskahoma, Oklahoma, where it is said even the mighty Tubby men were plagued by terrible nightmares for years afterward. Now, was this story true, and were the details fact? According to a Bigfoot researcher named Jim King, the answer might be yes. King believes the LeFleur County story is based on an event that took place much farther west in Kiowa territory. That event was related to him by an Indian elder. According to the story, Kiowa women were placed in a special teepee or tent on the edge of camp. When they started their menstrual cycle, the women stayed there being tended to only by older women until their cycle was complete. The elder told King that women were considered unclean during their cycles and Kiowa warriors were forbidden any physical contact with the females during this time. They're not even to look upon them. This seems harsh, but it's not too different than how many cultures treated menstruating women in the past. The elders said that once long ago, there had been trouble with ape-like creatures who were attracted by the scent and pheromones emanating from the tent where the menstruating women were housed. Since the tent was on the edge of the encampment, it proved to be an easy target for renegade apes who were said to have entered and carried off women on several occasions. To make a long story short, the Kiowa leadership decided this was unacceptable and put together a group of warriors to hunt down the kidnappers. The searchers did manage to track an ape back to its lair and killed not only it, but an entire family unit. Could the LeFleur County story have its roots in the tale told to Jim King by the Kiowa elder? Is there any truth at all, even the smallest of grains in either tale? I've heard many people put their faith in the LeFleur County version simply due to the name of the unfortunate Joshua LeFleur, and they wouldn't have named the county after him if it wasn't true. I have not been able to find anything saying LeFleur County was named after Joshua LeFleur according to the Oklahoma Historical Society's website. The name honors the prominent LeFleur family of the Choctaw Nation. Could Joshua LeFleur have been one of the prominent LeFleur family? It is certainly possible, but there does not seem to be any documentation singling out Joshua or his actions as the reason for the naming of the county. I've been an elementary school teacher for a couple of years. Even in my short time teaching, I've met some interesting children and have tons of memorable stories. However, one kid that's currently in my class seems different. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call him Tyler. Now, Tyler has always been pretty quiet and withdrawn in class. I just thought it was due to shyness, but now I think it could be something else. I had my students do an assignment where they were supposed to write about what jobs their parents had, and or what they did for hobbies. Keep in mind, I teach second grade, so some of the kids don't have a great grasp on the details of their parents' jobs. It's usually pretty fun reading how they view the occupations their parents have. However, Tyler's paper felt a bit odd. I'm not sure exactly what it is yet, but I've transcribed what he wrote here without the spelling and grammar errors to make it easier to read. Title: My Daddy. The text starts as follows. My daddy is a hunter. He has lots of guns and knives that he uses to help him kill his prey. He puts on his special clothes that he says helps him blend in better, so that his prey doesn't see him. He goes out when it's dark outside because he says that it takes a lot of patience, and sometimes he has to wait a long time before he can get anything. When he does come home, he brings in what he has killed and cuts it up in the garage. Then he puts it in the freezer so that it will keep longer. We eat what he hunts almost every night. I don't care too much for the taste, but Daddy says that I will learn to like it. He says that most people eat meat from the grocery store, but what we get is special. Our prey is better than what they eat, he tells me. When I was little, I had a mommy, but Daddy says that she didn't like him hunting. He says that he told her that he wasn't going to stop and she couldn't make him. I remember hearing them argue in my room. The next day when I woke up, Daddy said that Mommy left. He didn't go hunting that night. He stayed home and played games with me instead. Then we ate some new prey. Daddy seemed really happy and said that we would be okay without Mommy, and that he would always take care of me. He said when I was older he would teach me how to hunt. I was excited to learn. On my birthday this year, he said I was finally ready to help him with his hunt. We left in his truck while it was still dark out. He picked out his prey and said that he would kill it, and I could watch how it was done. It made me sad when Daddy killed it because it cried. It made a weird sound too. I think I heard something like it before one night when I was little. After he killed it, we put it in the back of his truck and went home. Daddy let me watch him cut it up that night. He used all kinds of different tools. When he was done, he put the head in a big freezer in the garage. He says it's a trophy, and that people who hunt put their trophies on the wall, but he can't do that because he has too many. Daddy said he wishes he could put them on the wall in his room. Then him and Mommy could be together again because she would see that hunting isn't bad. She would see all the pretty trophies he gets from it. He told me that one day I will be a great hunter like him. I don't think I like hunting much, but if the trophies could bring Mommy back like he said, I wouldn't mind it. I don't think they're pretty like Daddy says though. Mommy was prettier. In recent years, John Ramirez, who worked for the CIA for 25 years, emerged as a voice on UAPs and shared his insights on the subject that he learned during his career. He states that the exploration of consciousness and its connection to the unidentified aerial phenomena issue can significantly shape our understanding of the phenomena and their implications on humanity. During an interview, Ramirez stated that non-human intelligence has been around us for a long time. He referred to the Roswell incident and mentioned that there were accounts of telepathic communication with survivors of the crash. He also stated that the CIA had separate divisions focusing on the aerospace and aerodynamic qualities of UFOs and the biological connections with the non-human occupants. These interests by the CIA led directly to the development and use of remote viewing within the department. He further discussed his beliefs regarding alien forces and their influence on humanity throughout history. Ramirez suggests that ancient myths and legends are a part of lost human history. He believes that the ancient accounts document instances of contact with non-human intelligence, which he believes are divine beings. If you look at the Sumerian texts, they knew a lot more about the world than we give them credit for because we look at history so linearly. You know, we think that we are the pinnacle of knowledge and that before us, they didn't have the knowledge we have now. But what I think happened was that they did have the knowledge. However, that knowledge was lost or suppressed by other humans with agendas. And now we are rediscovering that knowledge through science. But through that science, we are going to rediscover our connection to the divine and these non-human intelligence who have been here and want to help us, not destroy ourselves. During his time at the CIA, Ramirez began experiencing frequent contact and communication with beings that he could not see the faces of, but who appeared shrouded in a cloak. Ramirez later discussed the topic of reptilians and their alleged involvement in society and governmental structures. Ramirez clarifies that when referring to reptilians, he does not mean actual lizards, but rather individuals with reptilian ancestry who may appear human. He stated that humans may have had advancements and influences from other beings, including reptilians. It's interesting though when I look at some of the official logos launched by the NRO, which is the actual secret space program of the US intelligence community. They launch secret spacecraft into orbit, and I can say that much. But they use these lizards as part of the logos, and I find that very strange. And they're lizards that are crawling all over the earth. For the past 8 years, I've served as the commanding officer of a Special Operations Navy SEAL task force, and as of today, I've officially handed over my position. Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell you which Navy SEAL task force this is, nor am I at liberty to discuss what we do or what we have done. But what I am going to tell you are the rules we are expected to follow. I guess writing this serves as a form of catharsis for me now that I'm no longer in command. To Major Patrick, not his real name, but I assume the person in question will know I'm addressing him when he reads the rules. If you're reading this, know that I have great confidence in your ability to lead, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Follow the rules, even if they sound like superstitious nonsense. You see, when I took over command 8 years ago, I probably had the same thoughts you're having now. I still remember the day I took over as though it were yesterday. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Corporal. At ease. At my words, the young corporal hastily cut down his salute and flashed me a beaming smile. I took a glance at his name tag and asked, "Corporal Emerson, Where would I find the office of Lieutenant Colonel Tom? His smile grew even wider. It was frankly alien to me how one could be so happy in the mornings, particularly a cold and dreary morning like this one. Who the hell smiles so much at a superior officer? Either he's a complete kiss-ass, or there's something seriously wrong with this guy. It's right this way, sir, down this road, third building to the right. Is his smile getting wider? What exactly did I say to make him so happy? Feeling my hairs stand on end from his increasingly creepy smile, I dismissed him with a wave and drove off in the direction he pointed me in. Hopefully he wasn't smiling because he was playing a prank on the new guy. Sure enough, his directions were accurate, and I soon found myself sitting in the office of one Major Tom, the person I was here to take over. Imagine those special force operators you see in movies, totally not accurate by the way. Then crank that image of Badassari all the way up to 11. And then crank it up some more. Throw in a full sleeve tattoo of a dragon that extends all the way up to and wraps around the neck. Thick bulging veins on the forehead and hazel eyes that look like they're seeing all your past sins and judging you for them. That is what Major Tom looks like. He was a beast of a man is what I'm saying. Someone who would mess you up if you so much as looked at him the wrong way. Someone who looks like he wakes his alarm clock up in the mornings. And to top it off, his voice was thunderously gruff. It made every word out of his mouth seem like he was engaging you in a shouting match. Good thing he's a man of few words. Major Rick. Good seeing ya. Like the view from your new office. It's all right, sir. It's an honor for me to. Cut the bullshit, Rick. Nobody wants to command this shithole, and you know it. Right, sir. This shithole, as you put it, happens to be the single most well-equipped task force this side of the world. It really is an honor. Well, maybe this'll change your mind, Freshie. I took the piece of crumpled paper he handed me. Funny, I would have figured this guy for someone who would demand for his paper to be ironed and wrinkle-free like his shirts. Opening the note revealed a list of hand-scribbled rules in different handwritings. Seems like it's a note passed down through generations of COS. Well, don't just gawk at it, read it. Or are you a dumbass who can't even read? The note was simply titled Rules. Lights out for everyone at 23:59 hours daily, whilst in base. Between lights out and reveille, if you hear the sound of a bouncing ball, ignore it. Keep your eyes closed and pretend to be asleep. Frequency 44-750 is not to be used for any training exercises or operations. Barracks number 5 in Echo Koi is the only bunk with 3 doors. The middle door must not be closed. No training to be conducted in base on Thursday nights. Any night training that takes place on Thursdays must be conducted outside of base. The Kim's range only has 17 targets. There is no target Zulu. Do not engage target Zulu. If an old woman approaches you wherever you are and offers to sell you food, buy whatever it is she offers, but never eat the food. Do not accept any change from her. And for the love of God, do not reject her. If you ever hear a soft giggling behind you, do not turn around. Do not acknowledge it. Never use the shower after 23:59. See rule number 1. She does not appreciate anyone knowing about her. Regardless of your religion, go to the altar on the roof once a week at 3 and bow in silence for 1 minute. This is the only exception to rule number 1. If the children approach you and ask for your help, help them in whatever way you can. They may deign to reward you. If you are approached by someone named Emerson, do not speak to him. There is no Emerson within our base. She knows. I rolled my eyes at the list of superstitious nonsense. This was probably a hazing process for new COS, set up so that the staff officers and play a prank on them. Probably some sick initiation tradition that I'd have to scrap in my tour. However, Rule 13 made me slightly uneasy. Did they set it up so that the first person I met would be the corporal? No wonder he was all smiles. Sir, how'd you know the first person I met would be Corporal Emerson? Was the prank planned that far in advance? Tom looked at me, patted me on the back and sighed. Son, if you already broke the rules on your first day, how the hell are you going to survive the rest of your tour? Sir, I've been part of hazings in my day. Hell, I've even conducted some of them, but this is, by far, the most elaborate form of hazing I've ever seen. Well done, sir, I'm in awe. Shaking his beefy head, Tom sighed. Look, Freshie, we ain't hazing ya. You need to listen very carefully. Do not F up the other rules. Emerson's a major pain in the ass, but he ain't the worst thing that'll happen to ya. Sir, I mean no disrespect. But you can't possibly expect me to believe that this list of superstitious bullshit is true. Fed up, Tom reached behind him, pulled out a thick file and tossed it in my direction. This here is the battalion nominal roll. All of our guys' files are in there. Take a look and tell me if you see an Emerson. Fortunately, the nominal roll was meticulously sorted in accordance to rank. As I flipped through the list of corporals, there was no Emerson to be found. This can't be possible. Maybe he was wearing someone else's uniform. Yet, as I flipped through the pages, none of the photos even remotely resembled that creepy smiling man I met at the gate this morning. That's impossible. I know you got questions, Freshy, but I ain't got the time nor the crayons to answer ya. The governor's coming in 15 mics, and I gotta go get his entourage ready. Roman 2. Patty, get in here and brief our Freshy while I go get the ladies presentable for the governor. At his command, the door slid open, and in came the prettiest woman I'd ever seen, well, this side of the wire anyway. Shoulder-length platinum blonde hair, tied neatly into a ponytail, clear blue eyes as dazzling as the brightest sapphires. I'm not ashamed to admit, I was instantly smitten. Captain Patty Jenkins at your service, sir. I'm serving as the executive assistant to the commanding officer of the force. I understand as of today that it'd be you, sir. She flashed a dazzling smile and stuck out her hand. Close that mouth of yours, Major, before you swallow a fly. I know Patty here's a sight for sore eyes, but don't you be getting any ideas now. Captain Patty's a distinguished honor graduate from the 72nd Ranger course. She ain't just a pretty face. Major Rick Thompson. I'm the commanding officer as of today. Pleasure to meet you. I shook her hand. Her hands surprisingly clammy. Patty, get the Major up to date on the SOPs of this place, and brief him about the rules. Gotcha, sir. As I laid in bed that night, I furrowed my brows as I recalled Patty's reaction when she was explaining things to me. Well, that's it, sir. That's the whole list now. So you don't need to worry about Emerson, all right. Sometimes I suspect he's just lonely. He's always looking for someone to talk to, sir. Sir, is everything okay? How can anything be okay? Based on everything I'd heard, something was seriously wrong with this place. Mass hallucinations. I couldn't find any sort of logical explanations for any of the things she had mentioned. Patty, I think you forgot about rule number 10. Her lips formed a thin line and her eyes narrowed. Then quietly and almost imperceptibly, she shook her head. Forcing a smile, she said, Well then, I'd best go back to my work now, sir. Let me know if you need anything else. That was weird. I guess I'll ask the guys at PT in the morning. My phone buzzed. Hello, sir. PT is at 5. It'll be a 3-mile coastal run conducted by Staff Sergeant Michaels. Good night. I left her on read and glanced at the time. 23:55. Right, time for some shut-eye. The events of the day weighed on my mind, and as I tried to drift off into the blissful embrace of sleep, I realized something was wrong. It was too quiet. Granted, it was late at night, but this was a different kind of silence. Normally, what we think of as silence isn't true silence. It's our ears drowning out and ignoring all the background noise. But this was different. It was a total and complete silence. No soft droning of electronics in the background. No cricking of insects. It was as though time itself had stopped. Total, complete silence. My gut wrenched. Then, as though the previous silence was an illusion, in the distance I heard a faint thump. Thump, thump, thump. Was it getting closer? It sounded like someone was bouncing a ball down the hall. Thump. A sickening realization hit me. The thumping was right beside my bed. My heart seized and I clenched my eyes shut. Why hadn't I heard any footsteps? I slowly slid my hand underneath my pillow and tightly gripped my trusty K-bar. All right, whoever it is gonna have a very bad time. Grandma, can I play with him? The young boy's voice nearly disarmed me. What was a kid doing here? There aren't any live-in families on this base. Even if there were, how the hell did they get into my room? An elderly woman's voice called out to the boy. It sounded further away. From the doorway, perhaps. No, dear, the soldiers are tired, and they're asleep already. You can play tomorrow. But Grandma, this one is still awake. Two clammy hands grabbed my face with impossible force. I couldn't keep my eyes shut any longer. I opened my eyes and lashed out. Or at least I tried to. In front of my eyes was a boy, two tiny hands still grabbing my face. His eyes, they're entirely black. The boy's face distorted into a maddened grin. And then he shrieked, "Sir, are you all right?" Wha? What? The flying F. I snapped my eyes open, only to see the worried face of Patty looming inches over mine. "It's 8, sir. When you didn't turn up for PT, I figured something like this had happened." "What?" I glanced around. This isn't my room. How did I get into my office? By my side was a pool of dried blood. And as I checked myself for wounds, I found the source of it. 2 small cuts on my wrist. What the F? Patty was staring at my desk, shaking her head and sighing. "Wow, sir, this must be some kind of new record. Breaking 4 rules in your first 24 hours. Part 2. So I messed up. In the span of 24 hours, I'd already broken 4 rules. What the F happened to me? It's all right, sir. You just missed the lights out timing. They don't disturb anyone who's asleep when they're making their rounds. Making their rounds. Patty, we're not talking about troopers on guard duty. What the hell is that kid? I need to know. I'm guessing you already have an idea, sir. Maybe you'd feel better after taking a warm shower and calm down for a bit. Meanwhile, I'll get Lieutenant Colonel Tom to talk to you, if that's what you want." I calmed my breathing and steeled my resolve. "Please do." Patty was right, I mused as I dried myself off. A warm shower really does do you wonders. Putting on a clean set of clothes, I broke into a brisk jog to Tom's bunk. "Good morning, sir." I almost instinctively mumbled a good morning before I caught myself. Glancing at the direction of that exceptionally cheery voice, I saw Emerson standing at attention, arm pulled tight into a smart salute. Mother F almost caught me off guard. "What mighty fine weather we're having today, huh? Did you have fun last night, sir?" He's still trying to goad me into a reply. Willing myself to drone out his voice, I broke into a full-on sprint, until his voice trailed off behind me. Something is seriously wrong here. Tom was packing his things when I reached his room. Rough night. I wordlessly rolled up my sleeves and brought the scabs to his face. "What do you think?" "I think you ignored the rules, and now you're realizing the consequences." "Look, I was against opening this role to outsiders in the first place. But that decision wasn't mine to make. If you aren't up to the task, I can write into the chief and resort your posting." "How the hell are you so calm about this? Why haven't you informed anyone, or even called a Mother F exorcist?" He shot me a steely-eyed stare and muttered, "Rule number 10, kiddo. What does that have to do with anything? And what the F is rule number 10 even?" "Look, kid, I've been in the force for 32 years, and I served all 32 of them in this base. Moving up the ranks slowly before I took command. I read your file. You're a scholar being groomed for success, short tours in multiple different units, along with the promotions that come with those posts. Hell, you're probably gonna end up a general someday." He sighed before grabbing my shoulder. This will probably be a short tour as a CO before you get promoted and shifted to another location. But for me, it's different. For the people in this base, it's the only thing we've ever known. Read through all our files. Most of us have been in this base our entire careers. As the CO, you need to be the one fixing these situations. If you can't do that, don't. Let one of the guys take over. Go take a cushy role in HQ. Don't let these guys lose anyone else." Is that a tear welling up in his eye? I'm sorry. I guess some part of me still thought the rules were part of a hazing process. It was like he said. I didn't take the situation seriously, and I messed up big time. But I sure as hell wasn't going to let some ungodly creature stop me from doing my job. I'm not going to give up on this role just because some Mother F brat made me piss myself. I'm going to do what I can to lead these men to the best of my capabilities. Well, what do you know? You got some backbone in you, kid. I respect that. But it's gonna take more than pretty words to last here. You're gonna need resolve, kid. Breaking some rules aren't just gonna end with just scratches on your arm. Tom lifted his trouser legs, revealing a large gnarly scar that spanned the entirety of his right shin, from his ankles to his knees. What the F? Sometimes breaking the rules take a large chunk out of ya. And sometimes you got no choice but to break some rules. Pros and cons, kid. My conversation with Tom gave me a glimpse of whatever twisted fate that awaited me. And yet, for some reason, it didn't fill me with existential dread or the need to lubricate the insides of my thighs with piss. Nah, it just makes me want to do something about this place. As I strolled back to my office, Patty was waiting for me. So, are you leaving, sir? Did Lieutenant Colonel Tom make arrangements? No, Patty. I'm staying, and neither hell nor high water is going to stop me from accomplishing what I set out to do. Wow, sir, color me impressed. Well, if you are going to stay, we are going to need to do something about the rules you broke. Right? The rules I've already broken. Well, Emerson's an annoying prick, so I won't be making that same mistake again. The only problem is what I'm going to do with the brat. About that, sir, I have an idea. My phone buzzed with a text from Patty. Sir, it's time now. Sure enough, my watch beeped to tell me it was now midnight. Patty's genius idea was to intentionally break rule number 2 and directly confront the entity that was the kid. Although I'm more worried about the grandmother. The cool sea breeze blowing in my direction sent chills down my spine. What am I even doing? Here I was, standing alone in the basketball court at midnight. Well, at least it's not the most dangerous thing I've done. Sure enough, I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. The thumping of the ball hitting the ground stopped when it seemed to be inches behind me. Trying to calm my racing heart, I took in labored breaths. Do you want to play? Steeling myself, I nodded. Hee catch. The whoosh of air told me the brat had thrown his ball toward me, and I instinctively turned to catch it. The ball was slick with some kind of fluid and surprisingly fuzzy. As I glanced around looking for the brat, it nearly slipped out of my hands. Wait, something's wrong. The ball was way too hard and way too heavy. How the hell did he make the thumping sound with such a weird fuzzy ball? And that was when the sickening realization hit me. Praying that my gut was wrong, I held my breath and slowly looked down. In my hands was the brat's head. His mouth in an impossibly wide grin, eyes black as obsidian staring straight into mine. Where his neck should have been were bloody and jagged lumps of flesh. And then the brat spoke. Now run. Run before Grandma catches you. Part 3. So, things definitely weren't going according to plan. I'd deliberately broken rule number 2 as part of Patty's plan to get the brat to leave me alone. What I didn't realize was just how poorly thought out this whole thing had been. Here I was, standing in the middle of the basketball court at the stroke of midnight, holding the bloody severed head of an insidiously grinning black-eyed kid. Said head was also telling me to run. If you looked up the dictionary for the definition of a shitshow, I'm certain it would be this exact situation. Sighing, I recalled my conversation with Patty earlier that day. About that, sir, I have an idea. She shot me a mischievous grin. Typically, there's no problem with breaking rule number 2. In fact, most of the cases I know about have ended after a simple game with the kid and his grandma. If you win, they leave you alone. On the other hand, if you lose, he'll keep coming back for you night after night to play with you again. I don't remember playing with him though. Patty, I don't remember playing with the brat. I'm ashamed to admit, when I opened my eyes, I blacked out. Patty wagged her finger at me, looking like she was trying to stifle her laughter. In my defense, no need to explain yourself, sir. Well, since you blacked out, it means you've forfeited the game. That's why that happened. And from now on, they'll be checking on you every night. Well, you can always sleep early though. But on the days you can't, you'll have to be mentally prepared to play Tilda. I sighed. So what she's saying is that I just have to intentionally play that brat's game and win. So essentially you're telling me to play with the brat tonight. What kind of stupid game are we talking about? Catch. My words elicited a strange smile from Patty. She's awfully jovial about this whole situation. Not quite Tilda well, the game is sort of like hide and seek. Great. First off, when the kid throws you his ball, that'll signal the start of the game. Once the game starts, you'll have 2 win conditions. 1, get from wherever you are to the boathouse and dump the ball into the sea via the window. You'll know which one when you get there. Or 2, hide somewhere safe and evade the grandma until dawn. How the hell do you know so much about this? Toot it, sir. It's rude to pry. A woman's gotta have an air of mystery after all. That just sounds like an awfully indirect way to say she's played their game before, right? So I just need to dump the ball into the sea? That's it. Do I have to start the game in my room? By the boathouse window, sir. You can't just run onto the beach and throw the ball into the sea. That'll make them mad. And no, The game can start anywhere except in the boathouse. That'll rig the game in your favor. Right? So here are my options. Pulling out the map of the base, I pointed to the firing range. If I start here, the boathouse is about 400 meters to the northeast. At full sprint, I should make it within a minute, then that'll be the end of it. I really wouldn't recommend that. There's too many trees and no cover. If shit hits the fan, there's no way for you to hide. Trust me, sir, there's absolutely no way you're going to outrun the grandma. That doesn't make sense at all. Well, if she says I can't outrun her, I'll just hide from her. What about the armory? I can grab the ball, lock myself up in the armory, and just sleep till morning. That will be more difficult than you think, sir. Honestly, I don't think it's possible to stay in one location with the ball, sir. Well, this is beginning to seem impossible. As I studied the map, the beginnings of plan began to form in my mind. I see. This could work. No wonder I wouldn't have been able to just hide with the ball. Run! Run away! Grandma's coming. There seemed to be genuine frustration emanating from the brat's voice. For the first time, his mouth wasn't in a wide grin. His brows furrowed as he stared straight into my eyes and bellowed, "Run!" I snapped out of it and dashed to the left, towards the empty bunks reserved for visiting troops. Right? My objective is the boathouse. I'll have to assume the enemy has an unknown means of tracking the brat, so I can't dwell in one place too long. Ramming the door open with my left shoulder, the smell of blood filled my nostrils. It was as though the smell had permeated the entire building and clung to every single inch of it. My boot sank into the floor like it was a sponge, and the loud squelch stopped me dead in my tracks. What the F? I glanced at the floor. Blood was pooling around my boot, seeping into my socks. Hesitating, I looked back, only to see a white shadow heading straight for me. She was crawling towards me, all four limbs moving in tandem at such impossible speeds they looked like a blur. Her mouth was stretched far wider than was humanly possible. Inside were rows upon rows of glistening pointed teeth, specked with bits of red. Her eyes were locked onto me, or more specifically, what I was holding. Perhaps my instincts of self-preservation took over. But I sprinted into the hallway, ignoring the splashes that accompanied each footfall. I ignored the nauseating smell of blood. I ignored the urge to look back. I ignored the laughter emanating from my hands. I just ran. Holy F. I'm not going to be able to outrun her. To the left, sir. What? Turn left now. I turned. It was an impossibly long hallway that in no way fitted in with the building's floor plan. Third door on the right, sir. I ignored the frenzied laughter coming from the monstrosity behind me and focused on the voice giving me directions. That always sounded just out of reach. The third door was so nondescript I nearly missed it. It blended in with the walls so well, I wouldn't have known it was a door if not for the red glowing keyhole. There was no knob. Oh, what the hell. I rammed into it, not expecting it to fling open as I approached. Stumbling through the air, I hugged the brat's head close to my body. Bracing myself for impact, I didn't expect to land on sand. I turned, the building was now 400 meters behind me. I was now on the beach. Huh? A sudden sharp pain jolted me out of my confusion. I looked down. The brat bit me. You cheated. Grandma, over. Here. At his scream, a white figure leapt from the roof of the building and landed with a sickening splat. The scraping of nails against concrete killed any hope that the fall had somehow killed it, and she flew into a maddened crawl towards me, faster than she was in the beginning. The boathouse is to your right, sir, go. I ran. The boathouse was 100 meters away. The maddened crackle of sand behind me told me that she was catching up. This was perhaps the fastest 100-meter dash of my entire life. Come here. Her shriek sounded like it came from directly behind me. I kicked the door to the boathouse open and leapt inside, just as a pair of clammy hands grabbed my ankle. Her long black nails were digging into my skin and drawing blood, pulling me towards her with ferocious strength. Her mouth opened wider and wider as she pulled harder and harder. Her black eyes seemed to gleam with anticipation. She was cackling. I twisted my body and looked into the boathouse. At the far end of the room was a broken window with a trail of bloody handprints beneath it. You'll know which one when you're there. I really hope this is it. I lobbed the brat's head through the broken window. She let go. No. And she leapt after the head, disappearing through the window. Relief washed over me, and I let out a sigh. I am never going through this again. Well, 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 sir. Looks like you beat the game. And the owner of the voice stepped out of the shadows. Emerson looked at me and flashed his widest smile yet. I guess you owe me one now, don't you, sir? This last summer I was operating a grader in a municipality that borders the northern provincial forest, and this area of the province is as beautiful as it is wild. There are many drainages, creeks, and small rivers that all get their momentum and run towards the bordering low-level land of Manitoba. I was down on the river bottom attempting to widen the easement up to the bridge and make the grid road a little better up to the crossing. As I was going back and forth and turning around for a couple hours, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. As I backed the grader onto the approach, I thought I saw something black as night sitting above this beaten game trail. I looked again and it was gone. No harm, no foul. I played it off as a bear or something, as this was beside the river. I began to cross the bridge and ascend the valley. I was back into the flats of the farmland about half a mile from the bridge. As I was cresting the hill, I thought I saw something hop or jump over this grid road. This was one of the major grids in the area, and I thought to myself it would have been an Olympic jump for an elk at a full run. But regardless, I got my phone out to hopefully get a picture of whatever animal it was. For those of you that don't know, when you're sitting in a grader, your head sits around 8 to 9 feet up, so you have an amazing view of everything. I slowed the grader down to a complete stop and thought to myself as to where did this thing go. All the while having my phone unlocked and my camera ready, it was within 3 seconds of looking my stomach dropped. I was looking into the eyes of something trying to hide behind 2 popular trees. We locked eyes for what seemed like 5 minutes, probably no more than 1 to 2, and we just stared at each other. It slowly turned sideways and like that disappeared. I was able to get a couple of photos on my phone that I'd like to share with everyone. I'm like you, I think a photo is just a photo, and I'm not saying that it's to be the end all, but let everyone make their own judgment. After a long ponder that the thing I saw near the bridge was probably a young, curious juvenile watching me from the bank. I say this because it would have otherwise had to cross this deep, vast river with all the thick foliage and run half a mile up the hill through thick brush, flank me, and hop the road all within about 30 seconds. Normal, Illinois. 2015. I watched some meteor showers, so I was watching for the torrid fireballs. Turned out the lights in the house so it would be dark, went to see if anything was happening, stood there, waited for about 5 or 10 minutes, and saw my first fireball. Knowing this would be a good night, I set myself up with an Adirondack chair with a soft drink and blanket cushion for a lengthy stay. Saw 1 or 2 small ones, about to lose interest. While facing north, I could barely make out something coming straight at me about 30 degrees off the horizon. It had no lights, made no noise, seemed to be gliding. Couldn't make out what it was, but looked to be about 20 feet across, which I thought to look like something hanging down underneath. Not knowing what it was or what to expect, I started to get a better look at this thing, but my mind and eyes wouldn't let me accept what I was seeing. It glided straight over my porch with the roof, so I jumped up and ran to the south end of the porch. Waiting for it to come on over, there it was. It looked to be 100 or 200 feet above me. I watched it glide out of sight. I do some flying Cessna and can judge pretty well how high something is, and by judging with that, if it were a plane, I could have read the numbers on a plane. I could see it. It seemed to adjust for gliding, but had no known propulsion. Stayed even keel, same elevation, same speed, same direction. First I said pterodactyl, but no visible head, letting my head accept what I saw. It seemed to be some sort of entity, and by searching the internet I came across Mothman, with what I thought were light-colored bags hanging down. Now I'm thinking of legs hanging down, with dark brown wings. But enough about what I think, there you go. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I live in the rural northeast of the USA. I backpack, volunteer search and rescue, and make my living off the mountains and forest. I've seen the creepy stairs. They're always the strongest structure in a building, hence why they remain long after the house. I avoid them, and feel free to message me for details on them, since you're interested. I don't believe these are the things to be afraid of though. As far as people disappearing in the woods and national parks, people somehow don't understand that people just disappear in the woods. It's easy to get turned around, even when you just walk off the trail for a few minutes to piss. It's silent, so it's easy to find patterns where there aren't any. It's what people do. When you go hiking, camping, make your living off natural resources, or even go for a walk in the woods, you are at the mercy of the ecosystem. Outside of the city, you don't get to live atop the world as its king. You have to exist as a part of it. Most people don't know how to do that well. Experienced hikers that go missing are often not the adventurers their relatives and the media make them out to be. Most SAR calls for hikers are for tourists whose families say they are experienced hikers who would never get lost and could survive. That being said, no one, not even when the woods, mountains, or ocean is your livelihood, is immune to being superstitious about it. Sailors, foresters, park rangers, game wardens, and biologists are all superstitious. We all have a direct understanding that every day we beg the mountains, the sea, the forest, and everything that lives there for mercy, and no matter how skillful and meditative you are, you always want to do one more thing to feel safe. You have to, or it'll drive you insane. You can't be certain your success after a certain point, hence the superstition. So avoid staircases to your heart's content. But it's less likely that there is a paranormal threat, big government conspiracy, or serial killer, and far more likely that we all understand, somewhere deep down, that we will always be at the mercy of the earth, especially when we are alone, stupid, and not nearly as skilled or invincible as we believe ourselves to be in the face of the wild. In the early 90s, my brother went back in there, and he and his friends found this old wooden wagon wheel and brought it home. Later that night, I remember staring at the wheel, and it seemed to have a greenish glow to it. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I woke to my brother's friend standing in the middle of the room, asking somebody something like, "But how did you get here?" The way he was standing was odd. He had his shoulders back, and he was staring up at the ceiling, kind of perched on his toes, like something was holding him up by the collar of his jacket. And that wheel was at his feet, leaning on the bedroom wall. I quietly said his name, and as I went to ask him what he was doing, my brother, who for some reason was sitting on the foot of my bed, arms folded on his chest, legs crossed, sitting up and staring at me with the meanest face, said, "Leave him." Neither had any memory the next day. Eventually, they took the wheel back or burned it. There was another story about it that I can't recall, as it didn't happen to me, but something that freaked my bro or his friend out enough for them to get rid of the wheel. I can still remember the look on his face and the way he said leave him. It was a very hateful. Hiking up a 14K through the woods. My dad grabbed my hand to help me up an embankment, and my hand was apparently ice cold. We stopped the hike and my vitals were checked. They couldn't find a pulse on me all the way up until my armpit on both of my arms. The guide's sat phone wasn't picking up a signal, either may have been an equipment issue. We made the decision to keep hiking on to base camp about an hour away and treat me for hypothermia there, as the only outward symptoms I was showing was having no pulse in my extremities. My pack was taken from me and brief checkups were performed every 15 minutes. After a couple of hours at base camp being treated, some warmth returned to my arms. We decided that the next morning we would huff it off the mountain just to be safe. The next morning I woke up with icy arms again. We, my dad, one of our guides, one of the more experienced hikers, and myself left most our gear with the rest of the group to carry down at their leisure, and unencumbered we made it off that 14K in a little under 3 hours, alternatively jogging and sprinting. After getting to the hospital and being at lower elevation, blood flow returned to my arms and hands. And that is probably the most dramatic diagnosis of Raynaud's syndrome. Raynaud's is the unusually thicker muscle membrane around the capillaries, arteries, and veins. Normally at low temperatures and high altitudes, your body will constrict those muscles in order to force more blood to the body's core. When my body constricted those thicker than usual muscles, it completely cut off the blood flow instead of just slowing and restricting the blood flow. Bodies are weird and awesome. It was around Thanksgiving 2019. I live in rural Catawba County, North Carolina. I got home from work to find my brother and nephew sitting in their truck in the backyard next door. I started walking over to ask what they were up to when a rotten odor nearly gagged me. It smelled like the raw flesh and the wet hair of a mangy animal. I then heard a low-toned growling or moaning coming from the tree line. I immediately joined them in the truck. We listened for maybe an hour. At times it was so loud that we could almost feel the vibrations from it. We could tell where the thing was, but could not see far enough into the brush to get a visual. It was dusk when this started. Now dark, it paced the wooded area behind our houses several times before finally fading away. None of us had an explanation nor volunteered to take to the woods with a flashlight. The next night, the same thing happened again. My brother was prepared with a spotlight, but when we tried to shine it, all went silent for the night. We were sure it was over for good, but we were wrong. I got home early on the third day and was met by a farmer who lives on the opposite side of the highway from us. He told me that he was cutting weeds from his back pasture when a large piece of wood was thrown at him. He wanted me to go over and pick up the equipment he had left behind. He was very upset. He visited for a while, and we told him about our experience. Luckily for all of our egos, our smelly friend made one final show. We heard a growl just like the last 2 evenings. Our farmer friend did something we hadn't thought of. He yelled at it. The vocalization immediately changed from grunting into loud, high-pitched yodeling screams, as if it were trying to answer. The thing obviously started running away, but continued whooping. This was the first time we heard actual footsteps. I am sure it was bipedal, as it sounded like a human running and pushing branches away as it went. My brother had a group of 5 girlfriends of his daughter staying with him at the time. He joked that all 5 plus his wife must have been on their time of the month. He was more comfortable taking his chances with Bigfoot than going in the house with the women. A neighbor, also a witness, theorized that it was the girl's condition that attracted Bigfoot in the first place. I thought he made sense but didn't bring it up. While we couldn't claim to be eyewitnesses, I was soon approached by a guy who occasionally worked for me. His brother and 3 co-workers from a local construction company were headed home from work. When nearing my house, the driver blurted out, "Look at that monkey." He stopped the truck as the creature crossed the road about a 50-yard sprint. After a moment of silence, he remembered saying, "There ain't no monkeys here." He described it as 6 feet tall, dark in color, mangy and lanky. None of them knew of my recent experience, so this was amazing for me to hear. Yet another community member came forth after that. A farmer lady who lives just to my north confessed that she had become afraid to go out to her garden. She felt she was being watched or stalked while out there. The same spring, a Boy Scout troop took their annual canoe trip on the river that flows through the area. They were scared by loud vocalizations along the way and consequently never went back. The following spring, I heard the groaning sounds again. This time not as loud and coming from the opposite direction. I dismissed them as a possible cow in distress. I called the farmer who owned the land adjacent to me and told him what I heard. He laughed at me and said he had sold all his livestock months earlier. My brother lives between me and the area from which the noise was. Hoping to blame his dogs, I asked him, "What the hell is wrong with your dogs?" He replied that the dogs were cowering under the front deck and would not come out. As of January 2024, the activity continues.
I was working as a forest ranger up here in Anchorage when this happened. My job at the time was to patrol the remote areas of the park, make sure nobody ever lit fires they weren't supposed to or throw litter when they weren't supposed to. I was equipped with my own radio and rifle with me at all times in case I had to deal with any squatters or crazy people who came in the woods looking to do bad things or maybe camping out at night illegally when they weren't supposed to. It was just before midnight on a Friday evening. I had been patrolling an area called Barney Creek. I hadn't noticed anything unusual happening, so I wasn't expecting anything like that later that night. But then I found a deceased person, a skeleton. More on that in just a second. On my way back to my car is when I saw this body lying across the trail that I'd been walking on. At first, I thought it was maybe an animal due to the condition that the body was in. But as I got closer and looked again, I realized it wasn't a bear corpse or any other animal because there was no fur covering its flesh. It had obviously died quite a while ago. After shining my flashlight around the area more thoroughly, with a sense of growing apprehension tapping into whatever bravery might be needed, I slowly approached the remains, took out my camera before beginning to take pictures of the evidence. I was in no way prepared for what I saw when I moved much closer to take a look. The skull was pretty badly rotted, and there appeared to be a bullet hole right behind the left eye socket. Some brutal execution must have also happened, maybe even torture, judging by how bony and ripped out their chest area looked without flesh or what was left covering up the rib cage. Whoever they were, somebody wanted them dead and couldn't accept any opposition from whoever they were going after. This meant that whoever killed them was still around, and they'd be coming back. They could have been waiting out for me in the forest, possibly planning to take out their sick revenge on me. I had one mission: to get out of there as soon as possible and alert the authorities for backup. I had to run back as fast as I could, which was hard with how freaked out and terrified I was. Still getting lost and occasionally trying to remember every time a branch or leaf would brush against me. I just suspected it was something that could kill me now, kind of like a monster's claw reaching up from behind bushes, ready to grab me by the neck and snap it like a twig. My heart raced with so much fear that I swear it was almost going to pop out of my chest without any warning at all. Finally, after what seemed like forever, I managed then to get away, but just collapsed onto the forest floor, completely exhausted. As soon as morning had arrived, I was successful in returning to the area, but the remains were gone. I couldn't tell if somebody had come in and taken them, or maybe some animal decided to bury their body under some dirt or leaves until fully decomposed. In any case, it didn't matter much because no one was going to find out who killed that person. But I realized afterwards whoever did it might have been looking for me too. It's best not to say anything about my experience now while I'm still working as a ranger. Look, I don't know what happened, but here in Alaska at night, those skeletal remains still haunt me. I have never seen a cadaver in that bad condition. But all I can say is, why didn't everybody just stay away from this area? Why did this happen? Who's this poor soul that got killed? It definitely looked malicious, like somebody had just left the body there. I mean, that's kind of obvious. Had it been an animal, it would have been eaten or torn apart. But the body had been there for a while, and there were no signs of any animals even touching it. How strange, almost paranormal, if you will. During my ongoing research into the many Bigfoot encounters that have occurred in the Taney County, Missouri area over the years, I posted a request for information on the timeline of a local Facebook group. I was seeking information on booger place names and received a message from Darla concerning Booger Knob near Rockaway Beach. I saw something a few years ago, but I couldn't really explain what it was, and my ex-husband couldn't either. It definitely wasn't any kind of animal either of us had ever seen, but when we stopped and turned around it was gone. Just took it as something we couldn't explain and never really thought too much about it. It was probably about 8 feet tall, kind of dark gray with a little brown. Had a mane kind of like a male lion, but shorter hair around the body and legs. Was walking upright on its back legs, but once we got close to our car it got on all fours and took off extremely fast. We slowed down, stopped to turn around immediately, and drove back and forth a few times trying to see what it was, but it was completely gone or hiding. Never saw it again. I'm not saying what I saw was Bigfoot, but I know I'm not crazy. My ex and I both saw something neither of us had ever seen before in our lives. I can't explain it. I spend a lot of time in the woods, and that was definitely a first. I was working on a pot farm in the Trinity Pines, which is like the size of a subdivision, and the properties are divided up like that too. So there's 1,000s of 1 2-acre pot farms right next to each other. The Pines are notorious for people disappearing, large grow operations, and crime in general. A friend and I were headed into town to get pizza and supplies for the roughly 20 people we were working on the hill with. It's about a 30-45 minute trip down dirt roads through the holler to a highway that leads into town, but it's only about 12-15 miles away. It was early evening or late afternoon. About 20 minutes into our trip, right before we're off the mountain, this girl comes running out of the trees, flagging us down. We stop and let her into car thinking she's another trimmer who just wants a ride into town. I immediately notice she looks frantic, so I ask her if she is all right, and she responds in French and very broken English. From what I could gather, she had escaped from a trim job. They had her shackled or handcuffed to a workspace, and she ran for it when they let her off to piss. Apparently, she ran straight down the mountain and straight into us. She said the people who took her captive were Nazis and they had guns. We ended up dropping her off at the police station in town. This incident took place when I was in about 6th grade. I'm from Ohio, closer to Kentucky, and we lived in a rural area very far away from people. Our only neighbors were the 2 houses on the sides of us. We lived in the middle house. I was really bored one day and decided to walk through the cow pasture behind my house and into the woods. I began walking and hopped the fence leading into the woods, just exploring for a good hour or so. I didn't stray far, but far enough that I couldn't see my house. As I walked, I got the sense of being watched. That's when I noticed an extremely large buck, bigger than what I'm used to seeing. The antlers were wider than its actual body and seemed sharper than they should have been. It was standing about 20 or so feet away, kind of hidden in the tree line. It was standing at an angle, and it seemed freakishly tall for a deer. The back legs were bent weirdly, and I couldn't see the front hooves. I thought it might be territorial, so I started to back away slowly, not making eye contact. Eventually, I moved out of its line of sight and started heading home. I remember it following me, but still at a distance. There was a noticeable rotting smell, which seemed stronger the closer I got to the deer. As I made my way out of the forest and into the cow pasture, I looked back, and it was standing on the edge of the forest line. It seemed weird, but I shrugged it off. Later that night, around 2:04 a.m., I heard banging outside my window. My window was about 10-ish feet off the ground and faced the back of the house towards the cow pasture. I sat up in my bed, which was pressed up against the window, and peeked out. To my horror, I saw the deer scratching and tapping its antlers against the wall of the house. I tried to shoo it away by making noise, but this caused it to look up and stare at me with its piercing, empty eye sockets. Then it slammed its head harder into the wall before standing up on its back legs and stretching. It began pounding and clawing at the wall, slamming into my window, causing the glass to crack. I let out a blood-curdling scream, which seemed to anger it. My stepdad came running into my room, ready to scream at me, but then he saw the deer trying to climb its way into my window. It was letting out grunts as it clawed at the wall, and its antlers broke through the glass. I fell out of my bed as my stepdad ran to grab his shotgun, firing off rounds into the creature's head. As he did this, the creature wailed like a human, almost letting out angry screams before falling back out of the window and crashing to the grass. My stepdad kept firing at it as it continued to wail, before it ran back into the woods in a manner resembling that of a human. Months after this incident, I was living with my grandparents when we received a call that my stepdad had died in an ATV accident that day. What they failed to mention was the fact that the ATV wasn't what killed him. When he initially crashed, he was paralyzed and unable to move, but he was still alive. What happened next was gruesome. He was eaten alive. Half his face, chest muscles, and arm were gone, and they assumed it was wild animals. But the only tracks they found were deer hoof prints. To this day, I don't know what it was. I was told to never talk about it, but now that I live in a city, I wanted answers. So, what do you think? A friend of mine is a diver and told me of a hideous moment he had once while alone in the darkness. He was employed to collect sponges around a reef at night somewhere in Australia. Him and his friend would set off in opposite directions round the reef and meet in the middle. One night he was making his way round when his torch started to stop working. He proceeded to start banging the torch on his hand to try and stir new life into the batteries, which was making the torch flicker on and off. Eventually the torch turned on for a brief moment, just long enough for him to see a large shark staring at him from a few feet away. Then the torch switched off again, leaving him in pitch black. I used to hunt in a WMA and had a trail that was the best for any hunting. It was my go-to. Deer, turkey, hog, you name it. One afternoon during deer season, I decide to go further down the trail than I normally do. As I get further down, I start to feel like I'm being followed. I chalk it up to just being alone in the woods and letting my mind play tricks on me. Finally, I find the spot I want to hook my climber to. So I make my way through some pretty thick brush and get to the tree. I hook up and climb and get comfortable. About 15 minutes later, I hear whispering. It's so faint I can't make out what is being said. Then I hear footsteps, so I get as still as I can be. When I hunt in a climber, I like to combo the F up so I'm covered from head to toe. Then I start to hear the voices getting closer and I can make out what's being said. It's toe guys talking and saying, "Did you see where he went?" And then another voice responds and says, "Just keep looking and be ready." They finally come into my field of vision, and it's actually a group of 6 guys. All armed but dressed in regular clothes, clearly not out to hunting. Luckily, they have no idea I'm in a climber and they aren't looking in the trees. They don't say anything else but continue down the trail looking around and pointing their guns like they're ready to shoot the first thing they see. I don't know what their plan was, but I got the F out of there before I could find out. And I started hunting in a different part of that WMA after that. As my wife and I drove through the rain-soaked, isolated area, a peculiar sight unfolded before us. It resembled an accident scene, with numerous flashing lights casting an eerie glow. Intrigued by the commotion, I instinctively slowed down, hoping to offer assistance. As we drew nearer, what we initially mistook for an ambulance revealed itself to be an object resembling a large soda can, lying on its side, propped up by 3 peculiar legs. Its creamy color took on an otherworldly appearance, accentuated by a vibrant red halo encircling it. The air buzzed with flashing lights emanating from the enigmatic craft. Caught up in our fascination, my wife suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream, jolting my attention away from the object. I turned around to see 2 figures approaching our car, their presence unnerving. These beings, best described as bug-like, boasted heads reminiscent of praying mantises. Yet their bodies retained a humanoid form, encased in bluish-gray jumpsuits. Fear gripped us as the unimaginable came into focus. Driven by terror, I, armed with a gun, instinctively reached for my weapon and discharged 2 shots towards the road, hoping to create a deterrent. The sudden commotion seemed to startle the alien figures, compelling them to retreat hastily toward their cylindrical craft, which had landed nearby. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as we raced away from the unfolding scene. As I glanced back in my rearview mirror, my heart sank. Additional humanoid figures, resembling the ones we encountered, gathered around the craft. Their numbers grew to about 9 or 10, standing as silent sentinels, while the object remained motionless. We could only imagine the secrets it held. It was a sight that defied explanation, one that etched an indelible mark of disbelief and fear upon our souls. The craft, however, offered us no answers as it stayed rooted to the spot, concealing its mysteries from our bewildered gazes. We escaped its presence, but the encounter left us forever questioning the nature of the unknown, forever wary of the potential truths lurking beyond our comprehension. As I stood atop the Neolithic mound on that crisp, clear afternoon, accompanied by my husband Philip and our 8-year-old son Edward, I anticipated a moment of tranquility and awe. However, my solitude was abruptly shattered when I spotted a group of people approaching the site from the northwest, traversing the adjacent field. At first, there appeared to be around 5 individuals, with one smaller figure leading the way and the others forming 2 pairs. They marched purposefully towards Bella's Nap along the field boundary, dressed uniformly in dark, grayish-black attire. Their pale, oval faces peeked out from beneath pointed hoods, their features translucent and ethereal. They drew nearer, only a few hundred yards away, and my disappointment grew. My attention momentarily wavered as my son Edward demanded my attention. When I looked back towards the approaching group, a jolt of surprise coursed through me. More figures had emerged, joining the procession. I urgently informed my husband, emphasizing that there were now hundreds of people coming our way. Impatiently, I urged him to hurry, for at least a dozen of them seemed to be purposefully advancing towards our location. These new arrivals seemed to materialize from the shadowy recesses of the overhanging evergreen trees and bushes nestled between the two nearby fields. Every figure sported a hood, maintaining a steady pace behind the smaller leading figure. From my vantage point, I deduced that the front figure must have been a child, approximately 12 years old, as they stood only half the height of their companions. Curiously, I could not discern any part of their bodies below knee level, as if they were wading through long, pale dead grass that obscured their lower limbs. They marched in unison, closely hugging the hedge line, never once turning towards their companions. Despite their vigorous stride, they appeared to remain in the same position within the field. Their progress towards the long barrow seemed halted, as if they were traversing a slope, descending into a ditch before ascending on the other side. Growing annoyed by their intrusion, I cast one final glance in their direction before deliberately turning my back and making my way to the opposite end of the mound. Yet, to my disturbance as I reached my destination, they seemed even further away than before, persisting in their resolute advance. I rejoined my son and husband, the latter having completed his photographic endeavors. However, to our surprise, as Philip climbed the mound to take a look, we discovered that the group had vanished without a trace. A sense of unease settled within me, leaving me to ponder the enigmatic encounter. What had transpired on that ancient mound, and where had the hooded figures vanished to? The memory of that day, the inexplicable march of the silent procession, remains etched in my mind, forever a reminder of the mysteries that dwell within the folds of time and space. One of my cousin's brothers told me this story. He works in construction, and he told me a story about 3 of his friends that he works with. The 3 guys are Mexican. Of the 3 of them, one is an older guy. This story takes place east of Flagstaff, Arizona, heading towards Loop. I would say about 20 miles from Flagstaff. There are a lot of cinder cones hills in that area. There's a stretch of Higway that goes down a long hill. The 3 guys were driving from Flagstaff one night. I don't remember where he said they were going, but it was late and the older man was driving. They started down the long hill. When they were halfway down, they witnessed something very crazy and weird. They saw a centaur, half man or half horse, jump into the center of the road. They said it was very big, at least 7 to 8 feet tall. It had long hair, and it was carrying a wooden club in one hand. They said it had a very mean-looking evil face. The sight of it freaked them out, and the guy that was driving swerved off the road, and they rolled the truck. They crawled out of the vehicle, and the older guy that was driving was having a heart attack. They called 911, and soon they were taken to Flagstaff Medical Center. They didn't tell anyone about what they witnessed because they feared nobody would believe them. The older man recovered, and they all kept asking each other if they really saw the centaur. They all agreed that they all saw it. They told my cousin about, and he said he went to a Navajo medicine man. He asked the medicine man about it. The man told him that it is true. He said that there are 7 centaurs that people have seen over the years. The one that they saw with the long hair is the evil one. The mean one. I've heard stories that friends told me when we were kids growing up. I wasn't sure if they were real, but after hearing this, I think they are real. My cousin said the 3 men are still traumatized by the experience, and they said they will never travel again during the night. Anyway, I wanted to share this story with the group. So this happened to my cousin and not me. He owns a house in the city, and his parents live maybe an hour or so away from him on a nice little chunk of property, few acres, not incredibly remote, but it's somewhere where people won't usually be driving at night. So I guess he was doing some renos on his house and decided to stay with his parents while the work was being done, and so one night, he's driving home, and when he's pretty close, he notices a car come up super quick behind him. He moves over a bit so they can pass him, but they don't. As he's getting closer to the house, I guess he's starting to freak out a bit, so his plan is to just get home and run inside. So he gets to the start of the driveway, kind of a long country driveway, and another car comes from the other direction and tries to block him. Now he knows something is up, and when he's close to the house, he starts yelling for my uncle to grab his gun, so he makes it inside and locks the door. This is one of those sort of heavy metal doors with no windows, as there's black bears in the area, and my uncle comes downstairs half asleep, panicked and ready to shoot whoever is out there. The guys get to the door and start like full on trying to kick it down. My uncle makes some threats, my aunt calls the cops, and the guys just kind of leave. No idea what the F was going on. I'm guessing some kind of a robbery, but who knows? Some context: this happened a couple years back. I live in a pre-war building in a big city. It is, I believe, 15 floors high or so. The highest floor is labeled PH on the elevator. I live on the 9th floor. I went in the elevator alone, pressed the button as I always do, and remember it lighting up like usual. The elevator then proceeded to go up, and up, and up, and completely past my floor. The 9th floor button was still lit up though. 10, 11, 12. I am paralyzed in shock and fear. I am scared of elevators, and I inwardly imagine if the elevator just kept going and crashed into the roof of the building. It goes up to 14, and then it says PH. The doors open. I am met with the most peculiar scene. I literally have stepped into someone's apartment. I'm in some sort of foyer, and I see hooks with some baseball caps. I glance into another room whose door was slightly ajar and see a kitchen, and there's a small bathroom in front of me. But none of that is as odd as the piece of paper taped to the door on my left that says police on it with "do not cross" yellow tape. At that point I noped out of there, but couldn't find stairs. So yes, I had to go back down the same elevator. When I got to the lobby of my building, I recounted this bizarre event to my doorman. His eyes widened and he pointed out two things to me. The penthouse is only accessible by key, so you cannot click the PH button in the elevator and go there, unless you insert a key and turn it. That's because, as I had already seen, the penthouse elevator opens directly into the apartment. The resident who lived in the penthouse apartment had just recently passed away the previous day. That leaves me to wonder, why did the elevator take me to the penthouse without the key and without me pressing the button and completely ignore my floor? Could the former resident have been going up to his place or playing a practical joke on me? Or was it merely a coincidence? I guess I'll never know the answer. When I was around 8-9 years old, my grandma had passed away. My mom and I stayed in her fifth wheel where she used to live on her own, and while I was 8-9 I didn't have my own room, so I would sleep next to my mom. I don't really remember much, but one night I was awakened by my own sweat, burning up in the covers. I opened my eyes and let them adjust, and that's when I saw something on the dresser cut out. It was white and looked like it was leaning down to get a better look at me. I quickly put my head under the blanket and tried shaking my mom awake. She must have been in a deep sleep because it took a few tries. I want to mention that this was in a very, very rural area in Florida. There's no way light could come in through the window as our driveway was blocked by huge trees. It had a round head shape, but the rest I didn't get a good look because, well, I hid. My mom finally woke up shortly after and asked, panicked, what was wrong, and I told her. She's always mentioned I've had a gift, but I have become skeptical as I'm 25 now. However, recently I've been having really odd sleeps where I'm awakened by something, same voice every time, saying hello or what's the time. It's been hard to sleep as well. Ever since I was a child, I've been terrified of the dark and couldn't explain why. But when I close my eyes, I can feel things on me and even hear them, but when I open my eyes, it fades. Does anyone else have this issue? Is it something contacting me, or is it just the human body being strange like always? I'm between now. My other story was about a possible apparition moving through someone's kitchen. It got me thinking about when I was a kid 4'7", really young, where I would wake up to go use the restroom in the middle of the night. Can't recall the time because I never really looked, but the house was dark, and I slept in my bedroom at the end of the second-story hallway. Across the hall was my brother's room. Down the hall to the left was an office room area. Directly down the hall was double doors leading to my parents' room, and to the end of the hall at the right was the bathroom and stairs leading down. Now, I would leave my bedroom from the left side of the hall to use the bathroom, which would be directly catty-corner to my room. And I remember at least twice where there would be a dog-type silhouette. One time it was moving from the bathroom to the office area. The second time it was just sitting at the top of the stairs staring in my direction. I remember this dog was huge, possibly the size of a large German shepherd. It had pointed ears and a dull red glow in its eyes. I assume it was black, but it was always so dark I'd just see its silhouette. It terrified me, obviously. This could have been my imagination, but I hadn't watched scary movies like Pet Sematary, or really any scary movies at all because of my age, so I had nothing to compare this figure to, or even suggest to myself mentally like a nightmare or hallucination. I had no reference point, basically. Anyway, I did eventually see Pet Sematary and woke up to an undead corgi beside my bed. But this was after the dark dog-like figure, years later I believe. Any ideas? The house was only a few years old at the time and was built on farmland. To address any questions ahead of time, yes, we had a series of dogs growing up. However, at this time we only had one named Ginger, and she was smaller than the figure I'd seen, maybe like 20-25 pounds and blonde or white. I, 22 female, have always had problems sleeping going back as far as the age of 7-8. I didn't have the best childhood. Both my parents were drug addicts and split up when I was about 5. My father was abusive towards my mom and would cheat constantly when they were together. Due to that, my siblings and I were put in foster homes when I was 6-7. My sister and I were always together in the same homes, total of 3, and my older brothers were also moved from home to home separate from us. Around the time we had all moved back in with my mom, my sleeping problems had gotten worse. I couldn't sleep. I would feel like I was being watched and would stay up as much as I could due to some chest pains and constant horrible nightmares. That would subside until high school. During high school, I would get sleep paralysis 2-4 times a night. If I were to take a nap during the day, I would also get sleep paralysis. I would just deal with it. Up until I started to see shadows and hear voices during sleep paralysis. One night I had fallen asleep and woke up and saw a figure standing at the corner of the room. It was a lady dressed in all black with a veil over her head. She slowly approached me, then got on top of me and started screaming in my face. This terrified me. I had never experienced something like that before. During this time I was also depressed. I didn't see her again or think about it until today. My friend came over and said that he had seen a lady wearing all black in front of me looking at me intensely, and when he turned and looked back, she was gone. What does this mean? The last time I had an encounter with her, I was very depressed. And although my mental state isn't the best right now, I am just slowly getting out of a depressed episode. I heard somewhere that she appears when you are close to death. How true is this? I am a 20-year veteran in the Force Service. I've worked as a ranger now for 12 years. My time, and in all my time working for the government, I've never encountered anything out of the ordinary. That is until my last station job as a ranger at Gooseberry Falls State Park in Minnesota. It was quite possibly one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had while on duty, and certainly not something I'll ever forget. Well, to explain how it happened, we need to go back about 6 months before that incident. I had been planning on retiring. My son had just graduated college and was looking to move closer to Minneapolis. So once he made the offer that he would work part-time with me while he looked for a full-time position, I decided to pass up retirement and stay on the job. By the way, I should make a note that this was all pre-covered. I had heard rumors of management positions opening up in the area. So after discussing it with him, We both agreed that he would come back home for around 6 months, while I waited for the opportunity to present itself. I was first introduced to Gooseberry Falls State Park during my orientation as a ranger there, and they took us out into the park at nighttime. It was an amazing sight getting to see all these bright campfires down below from way above on top of the waterfalls. The rocks around the falls are very smooth and slippery due to years and years of erosion. You have to be careful if you want to climb down to view the falls at night. Our group had just finished our tour and was going to head back towards our cars when one of my co-workers, Tom, suggested that we climb down the falls, just for the sake of it. I agreed, and we should have known better, and so did a handful of others who were nearby. As soon as we began climbing down, I sensed something wasn't right. But being fearless, I pushed those feelings aside as nothing more than nerves. It started out easy, everyone traveling downward in a single file behind each other, staying close and yet far enough apart for safety's sake. Then, around 3/4 of the way down, things began to get a bit more dangerous. Tom fell. I didn't see him do it, but I heard the commotion. One of my other co-workers had seen what had happened, yelling up to us that he needed help getting Tom back up the rocks. 2 guys rushed down to assist in whatever way they could, and while Tom was being helped back up, one of my female friends called out for help above him, saying she was slipping. It turns out that one part of the path she had been walking, had gave way underneath and sent her tumbling downward. While this may have been scary in and of itself, what happened next could only be described as something straight from a horror movie. We're all standing there in shock at what had just happened when I heard the sound of movement. I looked up, and there at the top of the ridge was this figure with long dark hair watching me. It was terrifying. It was in all black and had these faint yellow glowing eyes. It was in that moment that I felt my entire body give way as if I suddenly lost control. The next thing I knew, I too was falling down to the grounds below me. Everybody rushed over to help save me, and one guy managed to grab hold of my hand, while another wrapped his arms around one leg for whatever little good that did. They tried pulling me back up, but there was no use. I looked down below, and I could see there were people trying to help my friend, though they weren't having much success. I knew then that we were all going to die right here on these rocks if somebody didn't do something fast. That's why I remember the park ranger telling us about one of the waterfalls in this area called Lucifer Falls, which for some reason nobody had ever been able to find after climbing down to view it at night. It was said that once you get close enough, you could hear voices, supposedly spirits, whispering your name from below. Now, what is most troubling about this story is not so much what happened to me and my co-workers, but what happened with Tom and the female friend. As they were being pulled back up to safety, before either of them can make it out of the water completely, we noticed that their eyes had turned from their normal state into a solid black. It was like at this moment that my 2 co-workers realized that they were struggling with weren't actually Tom or the girl. I'll never forget hearing one of them scream as he pointed downwards towards whatever our friends had become. The other one, just before Tom and his girlfriend can pull themselves completely up onto the rocks, let go with both hands, jumping back down into the water below to avoid capture. We watched him swim off in the opposite direction, but by this time there was nothing we could do to save him. We never did find out what happened to any of them after that day. I can only assume they were captured and are now being used as some sort of test subjects for whatever their reasons may be. Just looking at my own hands now, I can still see the long dark hair growing on them like I saw that day. That's why I'm warning you all not to venture down this path at night. As a matter of fact, it might be best just to stay away from these woods entirely during nighttime hours like we should have. Whatever it is that inhabits these lands does not seem too keen on having people wandering around here at night. But if you are, be careful, for you may soon find the woods themselves can't tell the difference between friend and foe. So back in high school when I lived in my hometown, I used to go stargazing at night by hiking into the hills. One of my favorite points overlooked a large housing tract on the north side of the town, but was relatively secluded with how the hills formed a crest line above these residences. More importantly, this crestline blocked a significant amount of light pollution and allowed for better star viewing. So one night, I took a friend with me up into the hills to go stargazing. She and I were pretty alright friends, but I mostly asked her along because I preferred not to be alone out at night if I could help it. Plus, I was definitely feeling down and needed someone to talk with about how I'd been feeling lately. So while we're stargazing, she and I got to talking, and eventually I really broke down and cried. We had probably been up there at least a few hours, so it was really late at this point, and we were about a mile up in the hills. So as I'm calming down, my friend gets really quiet. I notice she's staring up into the peaks of the foothills, and I follow her gaze. And up behind the peaks, I suddenly noticed there's an incredibly dark patch in the sky. Now, to elaborate a little, at this point I wasn't on drugs or drinking or in any way hallucinating. In fact, at the time, I really prided myself on always relying on rational and reasonable explanations for phenomena in the world. But this was something otherworldly. The best I can describe this thing was as a relatively large dark patch, seemingly spherical in shape, but also with something more angular orbiting its center, as though the orbiting object was turning itself end over end, while the central gyroscope-like center was flying in a wide arc around the foothill mountain tops. It felt as though it was relatively close, as these foothills are not particularly tall, but was entirely silent. She and I watched the thing fly for a few minutes, whereby it dipped behind some hills and never resurfaced. I will say we definitely saw it weave its way around some peaks, so it wasn't just something tethered and certainly wasn't something floating without direction. The thing had deliberate, slow movement, always turning end over end around that inner sphericircle-like object. It wasn't easy to see because of the low light conditions, but the stars and hills provided some backdrop to distinguish the figure from the background. Now, logically, we both agreed that there had to be an explanation. Our hometown features a reserve Air Force base, and it is possible that it was something for meteorological purposes or even something more stealthy from the base. But to this day, she and I have no idea what we saw in those hills. After that object dipped away, we promptly hiked back to our car and drove off. We kept talking about it for the rest of the night, freaking each other out with alien stories about potentially avoiding being abducted. But to this day, I maintain it was probably military related. Anyway, that's my UFO story. I have a number of other heckin' camping stories too, but this one seemed to be the most creepy. Though there was also the time I was on a 3-day hike in the desert, found a knife in some rocks on the first day, and then on the second night had the sky open up and reveal thousands of stars due to natural phenomenon unbeknownst to me at the time. It was mysterious and amazing when I was in the moment of it though. I drove to a local convenience store here near Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania in Monroe County to pick up something to eat. My dog was with me and it was just before midnight. Everything was normal on the way there, but on the way back something weird happened. As I approached a stop sign outside of town, my dog started growling. My dog rarely growls, so when he does I take notice. I looked around and saw a deer walking toward the road from behind a large oak tree. The deer then stepped out onto the road. It's about 50 feet from me, but then the deer starts to walk toward the headlights of my car. As it gets closer, I begin to see its face much clearer. At first, I literally shook my head a bit in disbelief. Then I did a double take. The deer had a freaking human face. There was no elongated nose, no big dark eyes. It was a freaking person's face. The eyes had white surrounding dark blue colored pupils and was forward setting, looking directly at me. I just froze. I don't even remember if my dog was growling at this point. I was truly scared by what I was witnessing. It kept looking at me for almost a minute. Then it turned and slowing walked to the other side of the road and then walked off into the woods. I stepped on the gas and got the heck out of there. When I got home, I immediately went inside my house and poured a stiff drink. I needed to know what I saw and went online. I stayed up most of the night looking for an explanation for what I had witnessed. I read a few other accounts of what people referred to as not deer, but nothing as dramatic as what I saw. I'm beginning to believe that I witnessed the results of an experiment that went wrong. I found your contact email during my research online. Can you give me an answer as to what I saw? The day was Monday, June 26, 2023. I saw a Sasquatch in 2003 cross the Foothills Parkway outside of Maryville, Tennessee. It was huge. The smell it left was a cross of skunk, dead carcass, and swamp mud. It had to be 9 feet tall, with shoulders as wide as 4 feet. Stringy hair, but you could see the muscles underneath flex as it moved. Its thighs were round as a tree trunk. Hardly a neck to it and a cone-type head. Long arms. I would describe it as a half gorilla and half Neanderthal man-type animal. I never gave a second thought to a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or whatever until then. I do not care to see another ever again in person. People are stupid trying to track these animals down. I was off duty when this happened, but I was also in my uniform still and in a police car. I was driving to the gym and I get a call from dispatch saying there was an officer down at the local high school where a kid had been stabbed by another student. This made me drive faster since any school violence is extremely dangerous for anybody involved. Even though I'm off shift, I feel like it's my personal duty to attend. As I'm pulling into the parking lot, which is adjacent to the football field, I see a massive black figure running along the fence line about 15 feet off the ground. I had to do a double take. It looked like 2 legs, but then there were 4. It looked almost human, but too big. Its arms were outstretched, as if trying to climb or something, or just stretch out. It then leapt from one side of the fence to the other effortlessly, which made no sense. It was easily 10 to 15 feet in the air. It then ran over to the top of the car, and I have no idea what or who this thing was, but it let out this strange guttural yell that made my skin crawl. I can write all of this up in my report when I get back, but I don't think they'll believe me. I figured I would submit this anyway because it's been too long, and I still remember this thing vividly. I'm a cop, my zone partner, and I park our patrol vehicles at the bottom of a long dirt road that leads to an abandoned school. We only do this on night shift when it starts to get slow around 1 a.m. It's a relatively safe place for us to catch up on paperwork or watch some YouTube. We have had several odd experiences there, from strange lights that maneuver quickly in the woods to possible UFO sightings. We even found a body down there years ago that still has not been identified. But that's not even the most terrifying. This was around October of 2022 p.m. It was a dead night. Crime was low that time of year, partly because of sea and partly because it was cold. We had parked our vehicles side by side, facing opposite directions so that the driver's side windows line up. This is common as our line of work. My partner gets dispatched to a noise complaint and leaves. I use this time to step out to relieve my bladder. As I'm standing outside, I hear a whistle in the woods that are across the abandoned school grounds. These woods are roughly 100 yards from where I am parked. The whistle was a tune like it came from a human mouth, and it was oddly loud. We do have a homeless problem in my city, but not in the area I patrol. But I assume a homeless person must have wandered their way to the south side of the city. I get back in my car and roll my window up, anxiously awaiting my partner's return. My partner returns after about 20 minutes. I tell him the story and we move on to other topics. I'm a believer in the paranormal, but he is a skeptic. Within about 30 minutes, he decides that he needs to pee. So he steps out and walks to the rear of his patrol car. He's back there for roughly 5 seconds. And boom, we hear it again. A loud whistle to the tune of a slow song. The whistle lasts for maybe 10 seconds. He walks back to my window and his face is a pale milky white. So as cops do, we decided to investigate. We grab our flashlights and start walking slowly through the field. That grass is up to our waist. We get to about halfway in the field when we hear it again, but this time it sounds like it's coming from our right side where the school is. As we are standing there with our flashlights shining on the school, we begin to see the grass start to move. There is no wind, the grass is not moving around us. It looks like something is crawling in the field. The grass is moving slow in a straight path towards us. We begin walking towards the movement. At this point, we both have our hands on our firearms. The air is eerily still, and you could see our breath from the cold. I can tell that my partner is uneasy. We are walking very slow and quiet. As we get about 20 feet away from the moving grass, it stops, and we hear the whistle, coming from exactly where our flashlights are shining on the now still grass. Now we are frozen in fear. We are too scared to speak to each other. It feels like minutes pass, but was probably only a few seconds. I go to take a step forward, and all of a sudden the grass starts to move again. This time away from us towards the wood line. Only this time it's fast, too fast for us to run after. So we just stand and watch. We watch as the moving grass reaches the woods. We both have our lights focused on it. And again the whistle, coming from the woods where the grass just stopped moving. Only this time the whistle is quiet. This is the part that shocks us. We are now shining our lights into the woods. There are several large trees in our view. This thing stands up. It looked like a child, but not. It's hard to explain. Despite our lights shining directly onto the figure, it seemed amassed in darkness. Before we could even call out, it stepped behind a tree and was gone. We gathered up the courage to go after it. As we get to the tree, there is nothing. No footprints, no leaves crunching like you would expect to hear in autumn. It was like it vanished into nothing. We spent the next hour checking reports for missing children in the area, and we could find nothing. The creepiest part is that it must have been running on all fours when it was in the grass. We have a children's psychiatric hospital in the city, but they had no reports of escapees. To this day, we cannot explain it. And to this day, we continue to park there. 3 years have passed, and we never had another experience like that. But my partner is now a believer, and everyone at the department thinks we are crazy. I was stationed at Fort Irwin National Training Center, an army post not very far from Death Valley in the Mojave Desert. It was a pretty big post with family housing and such, so not quite secluded. I was Air Force attached to a direct air support unit at Fort Irwin. Our maintenance compound was on the edge of the post. Our actual shop was fairly secluded. I had stayed late at work one winter night. When I shut down the shop, I turned off all the lights and stepped outside. There was a winter overcast thing going on, with so much cloud cover sitting so low that it was almost a fog. No moon, no starlight. And since there were no exterior lights in this area, it was extremely dark. It was so dark that I had to sort of feel my way to the car. I had to feel the door to find the keyhole for my key. This was back in the early 90s, and I had an older car without the automatic door lock. Of course, it didn't help that I had stepped out from a brighter area into the night, so my eyes hadn't adjusted yet. I just didn't think it was a big deal. As soon as I got into the car, started it, and turned on my lights, everything would be fine. So I got into the car, shut the door, put on my seatbelt, and started it up. I then turned on my lights. There in front of the car, sitting peacefully, alertly watching me, was a coyote. Looking around, I see another 3 or 4 coyotes staring at me, lounging around like they were in their living room. I had walked right between 2 of them to get to my car. I jumped. I may have squeaked a little, grunted in manly concern out of surprise. I stared at them. They all stared at me in a sort of bored interest. Then I put the car into gear and went home. From then on, I brought a flashlight to work, just in case. As a retired police officer, aged 58, I returned home with my wife on April 18, 1996 in Wameron, Queensland. Stepping into our house, a peculiar smell of sulfur filled the air, catching my attention. Intrigued, I began investigating, but found nothing visibly out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, my wife proceeded to the main bedroom, turning on the lights in the hallway and the bedroom itself. She then made her way back towards the living room at the other end of the house. Curiosity getting the better of me, I followed along the hallway, approaching the spot where Jenny, my wife, had just passed. Suddenly, I walked into an area enveloped in an intense coldness. As I reached out to touch it, a strong electrical current surged through me, causing me to stumble backward in shock. Overwhelmed by a sense of revulsion and fear, I quickly retreated to the entrance of the hallway, attempting to regain my composure. Jenny, curious about my experience, ventured along the hallway herself and encountered a similar phenomenon. Undeterred, I gathered my courage and made another attempt to walk down the hall, only to be met with yet another jolt of electrical discharge. Jenny and I discussed the situation at length, repeatedly trying to pass through the area, but encountering the same electrical discharge each time. Throughout this ordeal, a presence seemed to linger at the southern end of the hallway. Our toy poodle sensed that something was amiss, and I noticed that when I gazed down the hall, the guanine at the back of my eyes reflected a strange bright orange color instead of the usual vibrant green. The presence of this entity emitted a sensation similar to static electricity, causing goosebumps to erupt on our skin. The area where the entity resided was exceedingly cold and discomforting. Direct contact with it drained us of energy momentarily and made normal breathing difficult. Later that evening, at around 8:30 p.m., our son Adrian and his partner Petra arrived. Eager to investigate, Adrian entered the hallway and experienced the same electrifying discharge. By that time, the entity had moved approximately 8 meters, now positioned at the northern end of the hall. Petra, who was heavily pregnant, encountered the entity, feeling as though she had been brushed or lightly struck, but thankfully unharmed. As time passed, all 4 of us had multiple direct encounters with the entity, which seemed to move with purpose throughout our house. Petra's encounters were less intense compared to the experiences of the other witnesses. At 9:30 p.m., the entity forcefully ejected Adrian from a chair. Jenny had a severe accidental direct contact with it, momentarily becoming trapped within its grasp. She displayed visible signs of distress, struggling to breathe, an elevated pulse rate, weakness, and disorientation. We checked the surroundings of the house but found nothing unusual, except for a column of warm air at the southern end. Throughout this period, no discernible traffic or external sounds could be heard within or around the house. Adrian later had another intense encounter with the entity, after which he and Petra decided to return to their own home. Around midnight, we witnessed a ball of light energy pass across the screen of our television set. An independent witness confirmed seeing a massive orange light suspended above our house at precisely 12:20 a.m. A neighbor reported that her house trembled and shook during that time, while telemetry from the water storage reservoir across the road inexplicably crashed and then restored itself. We also heard loud clicking sounds in groups of 3, repeatedly resonating throughout the house. In the days that followed, some of us developed symptoms resembling radiation sickness, including severe headaches, flu-like symptoms, sore eyes, and joint pain. 3 of us experienced chronic and permanent tinnitus. Furthermore, I noticed a brown pigmented stain on both of my legs and a circular mark on the top of my left foot. Several rocks in our garden showed signs of energy impact, with one even exploding into a fine powder. A candle had melted selectively, separating the stearic acid component and crystallizing it. Moss on the concrete path exhibited burn marks, and 2 small sections of the path appeared to have melted or glazed. Additionally, 2 of the witnesses, including myself, began developing substantial psychic abilities. The events that unfolded within our home during that time left us bewildered and forever changed, haunted by the mysteries of that night. Solo distance cycling through rural Minnesota a few years ago, probably 40 miles from anything except cows and corn. Midday, I stop off in an old family cemetery plot in the middle of nowhere to drink Gatorade and smoke a bowl. Sitting stoned in the shade and taking a moment to relax, I distinctly smell cigarette smoke. I don't smoke tobacco. I am alone to the horizon in every direction, and I turn and around, and there is a full cigarette smoking in the overgrown grass right behind me. I know deep down there was probably a rational explanation, but I choose to believe that some lonely old farmer ghost just wanted to chill in the shade and have a smoke with someone. I've spent the last year traveling and working around the outback. One night in far western Queensland, I was driving between two towns about 360 kilometers between the two, and being Australia, there is sweet F all in between when I spotted a headlight coming the other direction. As I got closer, it appeared to be only a single headlight, so I assumed it was a motorbike. And then I drove underneath it. I nearly shat myself, I was that startled. I jumped on the brakes and swung around, got out of the car about 100 meters down the road and walked towards it. This pulsating light about 20 feet above the ground and about 30 centimeters in radius. Being probably the only human being for 50 kilometers in the middle of the desert at 11:30 at night, I will tell you it freaked me the F out. I recounted the events to a bunch of locals the next day, and they said it was a known phenomenon known as the Min Min, and as far as I'm aware, there is no real scientific explanation. Ever since then, oncoming cars became a lot more interesting. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, my mother and my grandmother, we all went on a picnic out in the country to this lake. It was getting dark and we decided to leave. My grandmother took the wrong turn and she didn't realize it. We were traveling down this dirt road for a long ways. She realized that we had gone the wrong way and we pulled up to this driveway. By this time it was night and there was a glowing pillar that we noticed off the side of the road. It was like a bluish-white pillar, and we started driving up closer to it, and I remember my mother started screaming, "Back the car up," and she started beating her hands on the dashboard, and we could see that it was an apparition of a woman, and it was drifting towards the car. And so we got the heck out of there. All three of us seen it. I, as the witness in this unsettling incident, consider myself a level-headed and respected individual. It was upon returning home that I noticed something peculiar, a bright green, coin-like circle hovering in the air above the refrigerator. Initially, I dismissed it as a portable flashlight accidentally left switched on by my wife. However, when I inquired about it, she denied any involvement. My gaze returned to the mysterious green light, and to my astonishment, it seemed to be growing in size and intensity. Suddenly, the object began to move, performing intricate circular motions as it flew around me in a bewildering trajectory. Heat emanated from the light, accompanied by an eerie whistling sound. To my disbelief, the green light expanded further, transforming into the shape of a human-like head. Overwhelmed, I feared that my sanity was slipping away and turned my face to the wall, seeking solace in prayer to Allah. Despite my fervent prayers, when I cautiously glanced over my shoulder, the image persisted before me, a humanoid form covered entirely in dense fur, resembling an ape. It stood tall, with powerful shoulders and a muscular physique. Its single eye, positioned in the middle of its forehead, emitted a penetrating red beam, akin to that of a flashlight. The entity lacked a neck, and its head sat squarely atop its robust frame. As the intruder began to float just above the floor, advancing towards the room where my children were peacefully sleeping, panic surged within me. Hastily, I rushed ahead of the entity, reaching my children in time to shield them with my own body. In that harrowing moment, I found solace in prayer once again, beseeching Allah to protect me and my precious children from this hairy monster. The creature floated towards the bed, briefly covering us before picking us up and swiftly placing us back down, unharmed. It then retreated, standing motionless at a distance from the bed. Though the humanoid did not make any threatening gestures, I trembled in sheer horror, hiding my head under the safety of the bed sheets, continuing my earnest prayers. Soon thereafter, the doors creaked and a loud slamming sound echoed through the apartment, awakening my wife. Her presence confirmed the reality of the encounter, as she, too, attested to never experiencing any hallucinations. The memory of that night plagued me, the fear of the creature's return and potential abduction of myself and my children lingering in my thoughts. Eventually, we made the decision to move to another apartment, seeking solace and distance from the haunting events that had transpired.
Thanks for listening. Hope you already fallen asleep. See you tomorrow at the same time.